Evaluator Tesh arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning, though the concept of Tuesday meant nothing to a being made of crystalline thought. The ship descended through clouds that looked like cotton, and noted this in the report. Earth was beautiful. That was also noted. Beauty didn't usually correlate with danger, but the preliminary scans suggested otherwise. The Galactic Concordance had a simple system. Every species that reached the stars had something special. The Krell could share thoughts across light years. The Voth could survive direct hits from plasma cannons. The Luminari shaped energy with their minds. Even the small species had gifts. The Tic-Tic could see in 16 different spectrums. The Harmonics could predict probability with 90% accuracy. Humanity had applied for membership 3 months ago. Their faster-than-light drive was crude but functional. Their first contact protocols were polite. Their planet was listed as Sol 3, but they called it Earth. Standard procedure required an evaluation. Tesh had performed 237 evaluations. This would be 238. The evaluation began with biological scans. Tesh floated through the halls of the United Nations building in New York, sensors recording everything. Humans were bipedal. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Their senses were unremarkable. Vision in only 3 colors. Hearing in a narrow range. Sense of smell weaker than most predators. No natural weapons except small teeth and weak nails. Tush recorded the data and felt the first stirring of confusion. How had these creatures reached the top of their food chain? The physical examination of human volunteers provided more questions. Their bodies were fragile. Bones broke easily. Skin tore from minor impacts. They needed constant food and water. Temperature variations of 50 degrees could kill them. They couldn't regenerate lost limbs. One volunteer explained that a simple infection could be fatal without medical intervention. Tisha studied human medicine next. The hospitals were full of broken humans being repaired. These creatures injured themselves constantly. They fell. They crashed vehicles. They cut themselves on their own tools. The mortality rate for human children reaching adulthood was shockingly low by modern standards, but historically, it had been terrible. 1 in 3 children used to die before age 5. The confusion deepened. Fragile bodies. Weak senses. High infant mortality. These were the marks of a species that shouldn't exist. Tesh began the interview phase. The Concordance always interviewed random citizens to understand a species' nature. The first interview was with a woman named Oyan. She was 73 years old and lived in Mongolia. Her hands were rough and scarred. She had raised 6 children in a region where winter temperatures dropped to -40 degrees. How did you survive? Tesh asked through the translation device. Oyan laughed. We wore warm clothes. Built good fires. Stored food for winter. When times were hard, we ate less. When they were very hard, we moved. But your species has no fur. No natural insulation. So we took it from sheep, Oyan said simply. We learned to shear them without killing them. That way we got wool every year. Tush recorded this. Humans stole the adaptations of other species. Interesting. The second interview was with a fisherman from Japan, named Kenji. He had survived a typhoon that sank his boat. He'd floated on debris for 2 days before rescue. Were you not afraid? Tesh asked. Terrified, Kenji said. But fear doesn't stop the cold water. I tied myself to the biggest piece of wreckage. I kept my head above water. I didn't give up. Why not? Kenji looked puzzled. Because I wanted to live. The third interview was with Dr. Sarah Martinez, a trauma surgeon from Los Angeles. She had worked in emergency medicine for 20 years. Your species injures itself constantly, Tush observed. Why? We're not very durable, Dr. Martinez agreed. But we heal. Broken bones knit back together. Cuts close. We invented antibiotics to fight infections. We developed surgical techniques to repair damage. We even transplant organs from one human to another. You frequently engage in dangerous activities. Vehicle racing, mountain climbing, deep-sea diving. Why risk death? Dr. Martinez considered this. Because the risk is part of living. We could stay safe, but then we wouldn't explore. We wouldn't discover. We wouldn't grow. Interviewed 30 more humans. An astronaut who'd survived a module failure in orbit. A homeless veteran who'd endured 5 winters on the streets. A teacher who'd lived through a school shooting. A farmer who'd rebuilt after 3 consecutive crop failures. A refugee who'd walked 1,000 miles to safety. Every story was different. Every story was the same. Humans faced impossible situations and refused to die. Tish reviewed Earth's history that night. The data was disturbing. Earth was classified as a death world by concordance standards. The gravity was high. The weather was violent. Earthquakes shattered cities. Volcanoes buried civilizations. Floods drowned thousands. Diseases killed millions. Earth had predators that hunted humans. It had parasites that ate them from inside. It had plants that poisoned them. It had temperature extremes that should have confined them to a small equatorial band. Instead, humans lived everywhere. They inhabited frozen tundra and burning deserts. They built cities in earthquake zones and on the slopes of active volcanoes. They sailed across oceans that could swallow their ships. They climbed mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. The historical record showed extinctions. 99% of all species that ever lived on Earth were dead. But humans persisted. When ice covered the continents, they followed the glaciers and hunted mammoths. When drought struck, they dug wells hundreds of feet deep. When predators threatened, they invented spears, then arrows, then guns. Tish found something called the Toba catastrophe. 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano erupted. It blacked out the sun for years. Temperatures dropped globally. Most large animals died. The human population crashed to perhaps 10,000 individuals. They survived. Those 10,000 became 7 billion. Tiff compiled the report over the next week. The conclusion was unprecedented. Humans had no single advantage. Their strength was average. Their intelligence was good, but not exceptional. Their senses were weak. Their bodies were fragile, but they had something else. They adapted. When they couldn't survive the cold, they made clothes. When they couldn't eat raw meat safely, they invented cooking. When they couldn't see in the dark, they made fire. When they couldn't run fast enough, they invented endurance hunting and chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They turned wolves into dogs. They turned wild grasses into wheat. They took the entire planet and bent it to their will through sheer stubborn refusal to accept their limitations. Jesh presented the findings to the Concordance Council. The chamber held representatives from 847 species. Each had a defined role based on their natural advantage. The strong were warriors. The intelligent were scientists. The empathic were diplomats. What is humanity's natural advantage? Asked Council Prime, a being of pure energy who led the Concordance. They have none, Tish replied. Silence filled the chamber. Clarify, Council Prime demanded. Humans are generalists. They are moderately good at many things, but exceptional at nothing. Except one thing. They are exceptional at surviving. Survival is not a specialized advantage. All species survive, or they would not be here. Humanity made it one, Tish said. They turned survival itself into a skill. They practice it. They refine it. They teach it. They have made an art of refusing to die. The council debated for 3 days. Humanity didn't fit any category. They were placed in provisional status. Observation tier. Further study required. Captain Sarah Chun read the decision with a sinking feeling. She commanded Earth's first deep space exploration vessel. She'd been a Navy pilot before that. She understood bureaucracy. Unclassified meant unimportant. Provisional meant disposable. Within a month, her prediction came true. Human ships received the worst assignments. Uncharted space. Strange anomalies. Regions where other species ships had disappeared. Sarah looked at her crew and saw a teacher, a mechanic, a former line cook, a dropout who'd learned engineering from YouTube videos. None of them were special by concordance standards, but they were human. And humans had crossed ice ages with stone tools. She accepted the assignment to the Shatter. 30 star systems where reality itself seemed broken. 14 expeditions lost. 0 survivors. When do we leave? She asked. The concordance official seemed surprised. You accept? We do. This mission will likely be fatal. Sarah smiled without humor. Everything's fatal eventually. We're just stubborn about the timing. The Persistence entered the Shatter on a Monday. The crew had spent 2 weeks in transit, and Sarah had used every minute to prepare. She drilled them on emergency procedures. Backup systems for the backup systems. Manual overrides for everything. Her grandfather had been a submariner, and he taught her one rule: hope for the best, plan for the worst. Tashad requested to join the mission. The concordance approved and added 11 more observers. Each was an expert from a different species. The best of the best. If humanity failed, at least the galaxy would learn something from the wreckage. The transition into the Shatter was smooth. Too smooth. Sarah didn't trust it. All systems normal, reported Jamie Reeves from the pilot station. Jamie had been flying since age 15, starting with crop dusters in Kansas. Navigation locked. Course plotted. Sensors reading clear, added Marcus Webb from engineering. Marcus had worked oil rigs in the North Sea before joining the space program. He knew machines the way some people knew their children. Then reality hiccuped. The lights flickered. Not an electrical problem. The photons themselves seemed confused about whether they should exist. The ship's eye started speaking in 3 languages at once, then went silent. Numbers on the displays stopped making sense. Distance measurements showed negative values. Temperature readings claimed the hull was simultaneously frozen and molten. What's happening? Demanded Catherine, the Voss security officer. His armored hide was already showing stress cracks from radiation that shouldn't exist. The rules are changing, Sarah said quietly. Everyone strap in. This is going to get worse. She was right. Over the next 6 hours, the Persistence fell apart piece by piece. Not physically. The hull stayed intact. But everything that made it a functional ship began to fail. The navigation system crashed when the stars outside stopped being fixed points. They drifted like debris in a current. Jamie tried to compensate, but his instruments told him 3 different directions were simultaneously forward. The food replicators started producing meals that were toxic. Dr. Amira Mkonko, the ship's medic, analyzed the output and found proteins twisted into impossible shapes. The Luminary engineer, Shoil, tried to adjust the molecular patterns, but collapsed when the energy field she manipulated suddenly ran backward. We're going to starve, said one of the Krell, a hive mind species that spoke in perfect unison through multiple bodies. Except now the bodies were speaking separately, and the panic in each voice was individual and raw. No, we're not, Sarah said. She opened an emergency locker and pulled out bags of dehydrated rations. The kind that didn't need replication. Rice, beans, protein powder. We eat this. Catherine examined the package. "This is primitive." "This is food," Marcus corrected. He was already heating water in a metal pot on a chemical burner. "When the electric systems failed, you used fire." Fire always worked. The alien crew watched in disbelief as the humans prepared a meal using methods that predated spaceflight. Boiling water, mixing powder, adding salt by taste because the measuring tools couldn't agree on what constituted a gram. The meal was bland. Everyone ate. 2 days into the shatter, the ship's main computer gave up entirely. It displayed a single error message, paradox, then shut down. Every automated system went with it. "We're dead," Catherine said flatly. His species didn't believe in false hope. "We're not," Sarah said. She pulled a notebook from her pocket. Real paper. A pencil. "Marcus, I need you on life support. Manual control. There's a valve sequence that'll keep air circulating. Jamie, you're flying by hand. Use the stars when you can see them. When you can't, dead reckoning." "Dead reckoning in space?" Janie looked skeptical. "You got a better idea?" Jamie thought about it. "No, ma'am. Then figure it out. You learn to fly in storms with no instruments. This is just a bigger storm." The aliens watched as the humans operated the ship like it was a sailing vessel from their ancient past. Marcus crawled through access tunnels, manually opening and closing valves to keep oxygen flowing. Jamie flew by instinct and math, calculating position with paper and pencil when the computers failed. Amira treated injuries with a medical kit that contained bandages, antiseptic, and painkillers instead of advanced regeneration technology. "This is absurd," Tush observed. The crystalline being was having its own crisis. Its thought matrices kept fragmenting in the chaotic environment. You cannot operate a starship with primitive methods. "Watch us," Sarah said. 3 weeks in, things got truly bad. The Voth's regeneration system went haywire, trying to heal damage that didn't exist. His body started growing extra armor plates in random locations. Amira had to sedate him before he suffocated under his own skin. The Krell completely fragmented. 16 bodies that had shared one mind for their entire existence suddenly became 16 separate individuals. They huddled together, terrified and alone for the first time in their lives. The Luminari remained comatose. Their species had evolved in a universe where energy followed predictable rules. Here, there were no rules. 4 more species representatives had breakdowns of various kinds. Their specialized advantages became liabilities. The Tic-Tic who could see in 16 spectrums went blind because light itself stopped making sense. The Harmonic, who predicted probability, started screaming about futures that contradicted each other. The humans kept working. Sarah found Marcus in engineering at 3 in the morning, ship time. He was building something out of spare parts and wire. "What's that?" she asked. "Backup air scrubber. The main one is failing. Chemistry in here is wrong somehow. Carbon dioxide isn't behaving like carbon dioxide. But if I run the air through these filters in the right sequence, I can trick it into acting normal long enough to clean it." Sarah looked at the contraption. It was held together with electrical tape and hope. "Will it work?" "Probably not. But it's better than nothing." It worked. For 6 days, until Marcus built a better version. Amira was treating injuries that shouldn't exist. Catherine's species didn't get infections. Their immune system was perfect. Except here, in the shatter, he developed something like sepsis. Amira fell back on techniques from medical school. Antibiotics, fluids, rest, treatments that were 1,000 years old but still worked. Janie kept them moving. He flew by feel when instruments lied. He used the ship's rotation to maintain orientation when the stars disappeared. Once, He navigated by throwing a wrench and watching which way it tumbled. The physics were broken, but they were consistently broken in one direction, so he used that. "How are you doing this?" Tash asked one day. The evaluator had recovered some stability, but still didn't understand. "Your species should not function in these conditions." "We don't have a choice," Sarah said. She was calculating their position using parallax measurements of objects that flickered in and out of existence. "Either we adapt or we die. Other species cannot adapt like this. Other species never had to." Sarah finished her calculation and marked their position on a hand-drawn map. The Krell evolved in a paradise where cooperation was always rewarded. The Voth evolved on a world with predators, so they got armor. Every species in the Concordance had one big problem and evolved one big solution. And humans? We had every problem. Ice ages, predators, diseases, droughts, floods, volcanoes. We didn't get one advantage. We had to be decent at everything just to survive the next day. She tapped the map. "This place is trying to kill us by taking away our advantages. But we never had any to take." 6 weeks into the shatter, they found something. A structure. Artificial. It floated in space where space wasn't quite solid, broadcasting a signal that hurt to perceive. Marcus studied it through a telescope because the sensors were useless. "I think that's what's causing all this. Can we shut it down?" Sarah asked. "Maybe, if we dock with it. If we go inside. If we figure out alien technology while reality is broken." Sarah looked at her crew. They were exhausted, injured, down to their last week of food. The alien observers were mostly incapacitated. By every logical measure, they should turn back. "Let's go see," Sarah said. They docked using magnetic clamps and prayer. The airlock barely functioned. Inside the structure, gravity pointed sideways and the air tasted like copper. Sarah took Marcus and Amira. They left Jamie flying the ship and the aliens in relative safety. The 3 humans entered the structure with flashlights and determination. Inside, they found a machine. It was clearly a test of some kind. Panels covered in symbols. Puzzles that required solving impossible mathematics. Locks that needed specific biological traits to open. "We can't do this," Marcus said, studying a lock that required 4 arms and the ability to see in infrared. "No," Amira agreed. "But we can fake it." She used a chemical heat pack to simulate infrared. Marcus built a tool that acted like 4 arms. Sarah solved the mathematics by treating it as a puzzle instead of trying to understand it. They didn't solve it correctly. They solved it human, cheating and improvising and making up rules when the existing rules were impossible. The machine accepted their solution, perhaps because it was correct. Perhaps because the machine itself was confused by the shatter's chaos. Perhaps because the machine recognized something in their approach. The test ended. Reality snapped back to normal like a rubber band released. The persistency systems came online. The injured aliens began to heal. The Krell reconnected into their hive mind. "What was that?" Tosh asked as they limped out of the shatter. "A test," Sarah said, "for species that might become dangerous. It throws impossible scenarios to see how they respond." "And humanity passed?" Sarah shook her head. "I don't think we were supposed to pass. I think we just refused to fail." The Persistence docked at Concordance Station 3 months after entering the shatter. The ship looked like it had fought a war. Hull plates were mismatched. Half the systems were held together with improvised repairs. But it was intact. The crew was alive. That made it the only expedition to return. The docking bay went silent when the airlock opened. Sarah walked out first, followed by her crew. They looked tired. Marcus had a new scar across his forearm from a coolant burn. Jamie walked with a slight limp from 3 weeks of sleeping in the pilot's chair. Amira had dark circles under her eyes from treating injuries with inadequate supplies. Behind them came the alien observers. Catherine was carried on a stretcher, still recovering from the infections. The Krell moved in a tight cluster, their hive-mind connection restored but fragile. Shail, the Luminari, was conscious but weak. Half the observers were in medical pods. Tesh floated beside Sarah. The evaluator had spent the journey back compiling a report. The report was 500 pages long. Tesh had never written anything close to that length before. "Captain Chun," said Administrator Valkos, a being that looked like a tree made of silver. "The Council demands a full briefing." "We'll be ready in 6 hours," Sarah said. "After my crew eats, showers, and sleeps." "The Council demands 6 hours," Sarah repeated. Her voice was quiet but immovable. "My people earned that much." Valkos started to argue, then looked at the crew. These fragile humans had done what 847 species considered impossible. The administrator nodded. 6 hours. The briefing room was packed. Every council member attended. Representatives from dozens of species watched via hologram. The Persistence mission had become the most discussed event in the concordance in decades. Sarah stood at the podium and told the story simply. They entered the shatter. Systems failed. Alien crew became incapacitated. Humans adapted. They found the source. They passed the test. They came home? How? Council Prime asked. The being of pure energy seemed genuinely confused. "We sent the best scientists, the strongest warriors, the most advanced minds. All failed. You sent ordinary humans. They succeeded." "That's the wrong question," Sarah said. "You shouldn't ask how we succeeded. You should ask why the others failed." Silence. They failed because they relied on their advantages. When those advantages were taken away, they had nothing left. The Voth couldn't fight when their armor failed. The Luminari couldn't function when energy stopped behaving. The Krell panicked when their hive mind fractured. And humans? Asked a harmonic representative. We never had advantages to lose. Earth didn't give us armor or special senses or telepathy. It gave us problems. Lots of problems. So we learned to solve problems with whatever we had available. Just projected the report for everyone to see. I have evaluated 238 species. Each has a primary evolutionary advantage that defines their role in the concordance. Humanity has none. This is their advantage. They are generalists, adaptable. They have made survival itself into a specialized skill. The council debated for 7 days. The arguments were fierce. Some wanted humanity elevated to an elite status. Others wanted them restricted. The humans were unpredictable, dangerous. They succeeded where they should fail. They ignored the rules when the rules didn't work. While the council argued, something else was happening. The story of the Persistence spread through the galaxy. Not through official channels. Through the crews that serviced the station. Through traders and merchants. Through soldiers sharing drinks in port bars. A phrase emerged in Galactic Common. Simple. Direct. Call the humans. It started small. A mining station in a contested zone had equipment failures. Nothing worked. Repairs kept failing. Someone called the humans. Marcus Webb took a team and fixed everything with spare parts and creative thinking. The station manager asked how he did it. "I grew up poor," Marcus said. "We couldn't afford new parts." You learn to make things work. A diplomatic mission went wrong. The harmonics miscalculated. Their probability predictions failed. The negotiation collapsed. Someone called the humans. A retired teacher named Patricia Rodriguez mediated. She didn't predict probability. She listened to both sides and found common ground through simple human empathy. Military operation ran into unexpected terrain. The maps were wrong. The environment was nothing like expected. Elite units couldn't adapt. Someone called the humans. A sergeant named Deshaun Williams led his squad through conditions that shouldn't exist. When asked how, he shrugged. You go around what you can't go through. You use what's available. You keep moving forward. That's just life. 6 months after the Persistence returned, Sarah received orders to report to Concordance High Command. She expected another dangerous mission. Instead, she found something different. Captain Chun, said General Cathel, a veteran of 3 wars. The Council has authorized a new program. Cross-species survival training. You will lead it. Sarah blinked. I'm not qualified to train elite soldiers. You survived the shatter. So did my crew. We're not special. That, Cathel said, is exactly why you're qualified. We need to teach our forces that specialization is not enough. They need to learn what you call basic skills. The program started with 20 students. All volunteers. All experts in their fields. A Voth general. A luminary scientist. 3 Krell who'd been separated from their hive mind for the first time. A Tic-Tic who'd won medals for reconnaissance. A harmonic strategic advisor. Sarah looked at them on the first day. I'm going to teach you 3 things. How to improvise. How to persist. How to accept that you might fail. We do not fail, said the Voth general. Then you'll die, Sarah said bluntly. Because sometimes the universe doesn't care about your armor or your training or your advantages. Sometimes it just wants you dead. The question is whether you're too stubborn to cooperate. The first exercise was simple. Sarah gave each student a box of random objects, wire, tape, containers, pieces of metal, basic tools. Build a water filtration system. You have 2 hours. The parts you need are not in that box. This is impossible, said the Luminari. Then you'll die of thirst. Better get creative. They struggled. The Voth tried to force parts together with strength. The Luminari tried to manipulate energy that wasn't there. The Krell argued with themselves. The Tic-Tic used their special vision to analyze the materials, but couldn't figure out how to combine them. After an hour, Sarah showed them. She used a bottle, sand, charcoal, and cloth. Layers that filtered water through physical processes. No energy manipulation. No special tools. Just understanding how materials worked. This is primitive, the Voth said. This is effective, Sarah corrected. Advanced technology fails. Physics doesn't. Now build one yourself. The training continued for 3 months. Each exercise stripped away the students' advantages. They navigated without sensors. They survived without their natural abilities. They solved problems that had no elegant solutions. The Krell were separated for weeks, forced to function as individuals. It was psychological torture for a hive mind species. But they learned. When they reconnected, they were different. Still Krell, still hive mind, but with the knowledge that they could survive alone if necessary. The Luminari learned to fix things mechanically. Her entire species manipulated energy with thought. Sarah taught her to use a wrench. It felt degrading at first. Then a power failure happened during an exercise. While other students panicked, the Luminari repaired the system manually. She cried afterward. From pride, Sarah realized. The Luminari had solved a problem without her gift. Cathel visited during the final week. The general watched the students navigate a scenario where nothing worked as designed. Equipment failed. Information was wrong. The rules kept changing. The students didn't quit. They adapted. They improvised. They succeeded. I don't understand, Cathol admitted to Sarah. How did you teach them this? I didn't teach them anything new. I just taught them to forget what made them special and remember what makes all species the same. We all want to survive. We all can adapt if we let ourselves. The program expanded. 20 students became 50, then 100. Military academies started requiring human-taught survival courses. Medical schools added improvisation training. Engineering programs included a semester on fixing things with limited resources. The Concordance quietly updated humanity's classification. The official records changed from provisional status to adaptive generalists, survival specialists. It was a category created specifically for humans. It would likely never apply to another species. Sarah stood in her quarters one evening, looking out at the stars. Tesh appeared beside her. The crystalline being had become something like a friend during the long months since the shatter. You changed the galaxy, Tesh said. We just showed them what we learned on Earth. Nothing special. That is where you are wrong. What you consider ordinary is extraordinary to us. Every species evolved to fit their world. You evolved to survive any world. Sarah smiled. Earth didn't give us a choice. It threw everything at us. Heat, cold, predators, diseases, disasters. We survived because we were too stubborn to die and too curious to stop trying. The Concordance is stronger now because of humanity. Our forces are more resilient. Our scientists more creative. Our entire civilization has learned from you. Good, Sarah said, because the galaxy is a big place, full of things we don't understand, full of dangers we haven't met yet. It's nice to know we're not facing it alone. What will you do now? Tesh asked. Sarah pulled up a star map. Unknown space stretched beyond the Concordance borders. Unexplored, unmapped, dangerous. There's a region out here, she said, pointing. The void. Ships get lost. Strange signals. Probably another test like the shatter. The council wants to send an expedition. Will you go? Sarah thought about her crew. Marcus was already designing backup systems for the backup systems. Jamie was studying stellar navigation in case computers failed. Amira was stockpiling old-fashioned medical supplies. Of course, Sarah said. That's what humans do. We see something impossible and we go look. Usually, we survive. Sometimes we don't, but we always try. Thrakerd was something like amusement. I believe I understand humanity now. You are a species that looked at the universe and decided it wasn't trying hard enough to kill you. Sarah laughed. That's about right. The universe keeps testing us. We keep passing. Not because we're strong or smart or special. She looked at her reflection in the window. Just a human. Fragile. Ordinary. Stubborn. We pass because we refuse to fail. That's the only advantage we've ever needed. 2 years after the Shatter mission, humanity was everywhere. Not in overwhelming numbers. Earth's population was still small compared to species that had colonized hundreds of worlds. But humans had spread through the Concordance like water finding cracks in stone. They went to the places others avoided. Sarah found them in the strangest corners of the galaxy. A human mechanic named Chen Wei working a salvage station in a debris field that destroyed luminary sensors. A human doctor running a clinic on a border world where 5 different species with incompatible biologies needed care. A human farmer growing crops on a moon where the soil chemistry made no sense. When asked why they chose these difficult places, the answers were always simple. Someone needs to do it, or the pay is good, or, most commonly, it's interesting. The persistence was in dock for repairs. Real repairs this time, not emergency patches. Sarah walked the corridors of Concordance Station 12, and noticed changes. Human businesses had opened. A cafe serving coffee, which most species found bitter, but humans craved. A repair shop run by a woman from Detroit who could fix anything for a reasonable price. A bar where the owner, a former Marine named Jackson, kept peace through presence alone. "Captain Chun," called a voice. Sarah turned to see Cathal approaching. The general moved differently now, less rigid. The survival training had changed the old warrior. "General," Sarah acknowledged, "I wanted to inform you personally. The Council has made a decision about the Void." Sarah waited. The Void was a region of space that violated every rule. Ships entered and sometimes returned months later, their crews dead or insane. Most didn't return at all. 57 expeditions lost in 30 years. The Council had declared it off limits. "They're opening it up again," Cathal said. "But only to volunteers. And only to ships with human command staff. They're using us as test subjects. They're acknowledging reality. If anyone can map the Void, it's humans." Cathal handed her a datapad. "The Council is offering full support. New ship, hand-picked crew, unlimited resources. They want to understand what's in there." Sarah scanned the pad. The ship was impressive. Latest technology, multiple backup systems, designed with human input. She saw Marcus's fingerprints in the engineering redundancies. Jamie had consulted on the manual flight controls. "When?" she asked. 6 months. That gives you time to select crew and train them." Sarah nodded. "I'll need my original team. And some new people. Engineers who think creative. Scientists who don't panic when data stops making sense. Medics who can improvise. You're really going to do this?" "Someone has to." Cathal studied her. "I fought in 3 wars. Faced enemies that should have killed me. But I never understood survival until you taught me. Survival isn't about being strong. It's about being flexible. About refusing to quit. About being too stubborn for the universe to kill easily. That's humanity in a nutshell." Sarah agreed. The crew selection took 3 months. Sarah interviewed 200 candidates. She didn't choose the best. She chose the ones who'd survived the worst. People who'd been knocked down and gotten back up. People who'd failed and learned from it. People who understood that plans were just suggestions and reality did what it wanted. Marcus came back, of course. He'd been working on station design, but jumped at the chance for another expedition. "I was getting bored with things that worked correctly," he said. Jamie returned from a flight instructor position. "Teaching is fine, but I miss not knowing if we'll survive the day." Amira had been running a clinic on a Mayan colony. She treated injuries from 17 different species with equipment meant for 3. "I've gotten pretty good at improvising. Let's see if I can handle the Void." The new crew was equally interesting. A geologist named Yuki, who'd mapped caves on 6 different worlds, always going deeper than recommended. An astrophysicist named James, who'd published papers on impossible stellar phenomena. A linguist named Fatima, who'd learned to communicate with species that didn't use sound. A former chef named Antoine, who could make edible meals from almost anything organic. "Why a chef?" asked Tesh, who was observing the preparations. "Because when you're 3 months into an impossible mission and everything's going wrong, good food matters," Sarah said. "It's a morale thing. Very human." The new ship was called the Endeavor. Sarah appreciated the name. It suggested trying, not succeeding. Humanity had always been better at trying than guaranteeing results. They launched on a Tuesday. Sarah was starting to think Tuesdays were lucky. The journey to the Void took 4 weeks. Sarah used the time to drill the crew. Emergency procedures. Manual overrides. How to navigate when sensors lied. How to repair systems with improvised parts. How to stay sane when reality got weird. The alien observers this time were different. All of them had been through survival training. They knew to check their specialized assumptions at the door. Tesh was aboard again, now considered the Concordance's leading expert on human behavior. They reached the void's edge and stopped. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking at the view screen. Space ahead looked normal. Stars, darkness, nothing special. But 78 ships had entered that empty-looking space. Only 6 returned, and those crews died in quarantine from causes that made no medical sense. "All hands, this is the captain," Sarah announced. "We're going in. Expect everything to break. Expect nothing to work right. Expect reality to stop making sense. Remember your training. Stay flexible. Don't panic. We've survived worse. Have we, though?" Jamie asked quietly. "No," Sarah admitted. "But they don't need to know that." The Endeavor crossed the boundary. For exactly 6 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the universe remembered it was supposed to be impossible. The ship's eye started speaking in languages that didn't exist. The gravity shifted 90 degrees every few minutes. The life support system claimed they were breathing water. Time on the clocks moved backward, forward, and sideways simultaneously. But the crew was ready. When the AI failed, James the astrophysicist took over navigation using stellar parallax and mathematical models he'd written by hand. When gravity went sideways, Marcus had already installed magnetic boots and handrails everywhere. When life support read wrong but functioned correctly, Amira simply ignored the readings and monitored the crew's actual health. Antoine kept cooking. His kitchen defied physics in the void. Water boiled at wrong temperatures. Food aged backward. But he learned the new rules and adapted. Dinner each night became a point of stability. The crew gathered, ate, and remembered they were human. That meant something. The void was worse than the shatter. Reality didn't just break. It rewrote itself constantly. The ship's hull was metal, then ice, then liquid, then metal again. None of it was real. All of it was real. Physics became more like suggestion. "I can't think straight," complained one of the crew. "The hive mind connection worked, but felt wrong. The void is showing me possibilities that don't exist." "Welcome to being human," Yuki said. She was mapping the void with paper and pencil because electronic mapping was useless. "We always see things that might not be real. You just learn to work with it." 3 months in, they found others. Not survivors. Ghosts. Ships that existed in probability rather than reality. Crews that had been trapped between states of being alive and dead. They called out for help in languages corrupted by the void. "We have to help them," Fatima said. The linguist had been trying to communicate with the ghost ships. "We can't," Sarah said, though it hurt. "They're beyond help. Saving them would require us to become like them. Then nobody goes home." It was a hard truth. Humans wanted to help. That was their nature. But survival sometimes meant choosing who to save. Sarah recorded the ghost ship's locations. Maybe someday, when they understood the void better, they could come back. 6 months into the void, they found the center. A structure. Massive. Ancient. It pulsed with energy that shouldn't exist. "Another test," Ter said. "Everything's a test," Sarah replied. "Let's see what this one wants." They docked. Sarah took a team inside. Marcus, Amira, James, Yuki, and Tish. The interior was enormous. Empty. Just a single chamber with a pedestal in the center. On the pedestal was a question, written in a language that translated itself into whatever you thought in. "What is your purpose?" James laughed. "That's it? That's the big mystery? Philosophy?" "Answer it wrong and we probably die," Marcus said. Or worse, Amira added. This is the kind of place that has fates worse than death. They discussed it for hours. Every answer seemed wrong. To explore. Too simple. To survive. Too narrow. To seek knowledge. Too ambitious. Finally, Sarah approached the pedestal. We don't have one, she said aloud. The structure waited. Humans don't have a grand purpose. We just keep going. We see what's over the next hill. We try to leave things better than we found them. We help when we can. We survive when we must. We don't have a purpose written into our biology like other species. We make it up as we go. The structure considered this. That's not very impressive, James whispered. It's honest, Sarah said. The void changed. Not violently, gradually, like a storm calming. The impossible physics settled into merely improbable. The ghost ships faded or became solid. Time started flowing normally. The void was still dangerous, still strange, but it was navigable now. What did you do? Tesh asked. I think the void was another test. Not looking for the right answer. Looking for honesty. Every other species probably tried to sound impressive. Claimed grand purposes. The void didn't believe them. Sarah looked around. But humans really don't have a purpose except to keep existing. That's not impressive. But it's true. The journey out took 2 weeks. The Endeavor emerged from the void intact. Crew alive. Data collected. Mystery solved. The Concordance Station erupted in celebration when they docked. The first expedition to enter the void and return by choice. The first to bring back useful data. The first to survive with the entire crew intact. Sarah gave her report to the council. She explained what they'd found. How the void tested honesty rather than capability. How it calmed once they stopped trying to impress it. Humanity has done it again, Council Prime said. You succeeded where others failed. You solved another impossible problem. We got lucky, Sarah said. Another crew might have figured it out, but they didn't. You did. Every time we face something impossible, humans find a way. Sarah thought about that. About the shatter. About the void. About all the impossible places humans had gone and somehow survived. We're not special, she said finally. We're just practiced. Earth gave us 10,000 years of impossible problems. We got good at solving them. Not because we're strong or smart. Because we had to be. Survival isn't a gift we were born with. It's a skill we learned because the alternative was death. She looked at the council members. Hundreds of species. Each with natural advantages. Each powerful in their own way. You asked what makes humans special. Nothing makes us special. We're average at almost everything. But average at everything means we can handle anything. We don't have one big strength. We have 1,000 small ones. And when those aren't enough, we make up new ones. That's what humans do. We adapt. We persist. We survive. Not because we're the best. Because we refuse to be the worst. Council Prime glowed brighter, which meant approval. The Concordance recognizes humanity's unique contribution. You have taught the galaxy that specialization, while powerful, is not the only path. That flexibility has value. That survival is indeed a skill. Sarah smiled. Does this mean you'll keep sending us to impossible places? Would you prefer we didn't? Sarah thought about her crew. Already planning the next expedition. Already looking at maps of unexplored space. Already wondering what impossible thing they'd survive next. No, she said. Keep the assignments coming. We're humans. Impossible is what we do. And somewhere in the galaxy, in the dark places where reality bent and broke, in the regions too dangerous for specialized species, humans were already there. Fixing things, surviving, thriving, Not because they were special, because they turned survival into an art form, and they were very, very good at it.